Hey everyone, I am Swish from Legit Games, and today we're going to be trying out some sweet new tech in Modern Storm. Now before we go into the deck tech, if you enjoy this video series, please give me a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more tutorials in the future, please subscribe to Legit Games on YouTube. Now lastly, I don't really do these videos for money, but it does take money to make these videos. So if you're interested in supporting the channel financially, you can find the link to our Patreon page below in the description. So why am I playing Storm? Well, Ixalan, or Echelon, or however the supposed to say it, is out. And with Ixalan, I'm just going to call it Ixalan from here on out. And if I'm mispronouncing it, then so be it. But with Ixalan coming out, that means we get Opt, which is a really old cantrip that didn't see a whole lot of play. But nowadays, it may actually be one of the best cantrips we have available, especially in Modern. I really wanted to see if Opt was going to be good in Modern, and Storm is just a deck that likes to run, cheap blue cantrips. So it just seemed like a good testing bed. I'm going to be using a mostly stock blue-red Baral-Storm list, but I'm going to be replacing the sleight of hands with Opt. So just going over the deck tech, we are going to be using a full play set of Opts, of course. We're also going to be using a full play set of Serum Visions. We've also got a couple of Lightning Bolts in the deck. These are mostly just here to take care of problematic creatures that basically prevent our deck from working. One of the hardest decks for us to beat is Death and Taxes, and a card like say Thalia or Leonin Arbiter or even Meddling Mage can basically shut the whole deck down, and if we don't have some main deck way to deal with them, we just kind of lose game one. And Lightning Bolt is still a good card against a lot of aggressive decks. It's just good removal spells. Occasionally, if you're having trouble getting Storm off, you can get that last 3 points of damage in, so having a couple in the deck is not going to be detrimental to the deck's performance in any way. Now, the engine that makes the deck run is the full playset of Baral Chief of Compliances, which are going to make our instants and sorceries cost one less. That's kind of what turns all of our rituals into dark rituals. So that's kind of the basis of why this particular version of Storm works the way it works. You've got a full playset of Baral Chief of Compliances, along with the classic Goblin Electromancer, which basically does the same thing. For your rituals, standard package, Desperate Ritual, and Pyretic Ritual, basically the same card. You've also got Manamorphose, which ramps you a mana when you have one of your cost reducers out, and it also draws you a card. You've also got your finishers in Grape Shot. And then you've also got Past in Flames to kind of keep going off. Basically, you just keep on cantripping, then you cast Past in Flames, and then you cast some more cantrips, and then you just keep on going. That's how Storm works. The other thing that you typically see in Baral-Storm versions is Gifts Ungiven. With all the cost reducers, it makes Gifts Ungiven a relatively cheap spell to cast. And Gifts Ungiven, the basic package that you typically get is one copy of Past in Flames, one copy of Desperate Ritual, one copy of Pyretic Ritual, a copy of Manamorphose, and then it doesn't really matter what two cards your opponent puts in the graveyard. Past in Flames basically means that you can cast all of them, and you just keep on going with the combo. Also with Past in Flames, if you're using Gifts Ungiven to get all those cards into the graveyard, Past in Flames also lets you recast Gifts Ungiven, so you just basically keep chaining forever until you eventually just Grape Shot them for a bajillion. Now, for a little bit of extra protection, we also have a full playset of Remands. There's a lot of different counterspells that could go in Storm. I like Remand specifically because of the way that it interacts with Baral, Chief of Compliance. Essentially, the second half of Baral is whenever you counter a spell, you get to loot. And being able to loot in addition to drawing the card off of Remand is just a lot of value. And it lets you dig really, really deep in the deck to get more pieces of the Storm combo. And a lot of the times when you're remanding, you don't really need a permanent solution to a problem. You just need kind of a temporary solution to give yourself another turn to keep on going. So the extra card draw is really, really good. And of course, Remand is 1 mana cheaper if you have Brawl out. So it kind of becomes the best counterspell that way. Now we're running 18 lands with a combination of fetch lands, basics, Spire Bluff Canals, and Steam Vents. You may notice that we are also running a singleton of Hallowed Fountain, and that's for some options in the sideboard. Speaking of the sideboard, we have 2 more copies of Lightning Bolt for the decks that we really, really need those extra removal spells from. We also have a couple of copies of Shattering Spree. Shattering Spree is just a value card. It's good against Affinity. It's good against Tron. Occasionally, it comes in when you run into like a Tesserator deck and a handful of combo decks. It's just a really good card, especially when you can just produce a lot of red mana very, very quickly, which Storm obviously does. For some additional protections against decks that run counterspells or other combo decks, we have a couple copies of Negate, which of course are cheaper when you have a Baral or Electromancer out, so that lets you gives you a little bit of an edge in the counter war. We got a couple of Anger of the Gods in the deck for decks that kind of want to go wide, like Elves or again actually even Death and Taxes decks, and then of course all of your Vizier Seer combo decks, things like that. We got a couple copies of Wear and Tear. These are essentially our enchantment removal cards. Wear and Tear is value when you do occasionally get to destroy an artifact in an enchantment, but the main reason it is there is so you can beat like Leyline of Sanctity or other enchantments that are going to give you trouble. We also have a couple of copies of Empty the Warrens. This is kind of the standard for Blue-Red Storm, excuse me. And that's because, a lot of the times the way to beat Blue-Red Storm is to beat Past in Flames, so you want to have graveyard removal. And a lot of times the easy way to kind of circumvent that is to bring in Empty the Warrens in place of Past in Flames, because you don't really need to do like a full 20 damage like you do with Grape Shot with Empty the Warrens. If you can Storm for like, say, 5 or 6 and put 10 Goblins on the table, most decks can't beat that. So really, this is just a way to kind of make it so our opponent's graveyard hate really doesn't do anything. Now, the other spicy tech that I have in this particular deck is because we're running the full playset of Gifts Ungiven, I'm also going to be running the Unburial Rites Gifts Ungiven combo. Now, if you're not familiar with how this works, Gifts Ungiven says that you can find up to 4 cards, and your opponent picks 2 of them and puts them in the graveyard. If you only pick 2 cards, they have to go to the graveyard. So what you do is you get an Unburial Rites, and then either an Elish Norn or a Iona Shield of Emeria, and you put them both in the graveyard, and then you get to Unburial Rites them, and then you basically get to lock your opponent out of the game. A couple of times in my testing, a lot of the ways that I've won a couple of games is just having a handful of Electromancers and a Baral out, and then Unburial Rightsing an Elish Norn and attacking for a really big pile of damage. A lot of decks can't beat all of their creatures getting -2/-2, so Elish Norn is a really great way to lock people out. And then of course Iona, if your opponent's on a monocolor deck, it's impossible to beat. So, and that's the deck. Now we're going to be running this Blue-Red Storm deck through a 5-round Modern Friendly League, and hopefully by the end of the league we're going to be able to determine whether or not Opt has got what it takes to hang with the established cantrips that we already see in Modern, or if it should stay in Standard. Either way, we're going to see in the first game.